welcome back. I'm Satorri, and we're playing Kerbal Space Program on career mode as Wraith Space Industries. I hope you're enjoying the series. If you haven't seen the other videos, I'm maintaining a playlist so you can find your way through the series. The last episode we made a successful trip around the moon, eventually. But now we're flush with science. So it's time for us to go about getting some new technology. Let's head over to R&D and do some shopping. Now, we've been eyeballing, this barometer for a while now. And this is going to give us another set of measurements for science. So let's just pick that up straight away. We also have electronics down here, and we saw in our last mission how valuable these simple solar panels will be. But we also saw that we could tack on some extra batteries, and that'd be pretty okay. So let's check out our other options. Now, one tier down, the blocks are half the price, but they have things that we don't strictly need yet. We spend a little time in the atmosphere currently, so control surfaces aren't going to be put to much use. But the standard construction, though, with the crew cabin and the stabilizers and the struts, is definitely appealing. So heavy rocketry has the poodle and the skipper that we talked about last episode. These will let us make use of the larger form fuel tanks and equipment, so yeah, let's definitely grab this now. I'm still tempted by the solar panels, but let's pick the cheaper construction tools. That'll leave us with enough to get one more 90 science by, having just shy of another 45. Now, I think our other contender here is actually advanced construction, which has more aerodynamic nose cones and new decouplers, and our first fairing. And I think in that comparison, I really like advanced construction better. But don't worry, solar power. We'll be back for you soon. We don't want to try lunar landing without panels. So next we need to see to our contracts. And I've been thinking about it, and our contracts haven't been super easy to accomplish on our quest for pushing our scientific boundaries. I think the best thing for us right now is to buckle down and focus on completing some of our contracts to bring in some cash. So we're already seeing that we're limited in the R&D tree, and to be able to go higher, we're going to need almost 500,000 Kerbucks to raise that cap. So let's see what we already have in our pocket. Now, we have our mission to collect science in the space around Kerbin. Now that we definitely can do in the course of business wherever we go next. We have our Juno splashdown test. This requires us to get a Juno into the water. So we'll have to see if we can tag one onto a rocket and just plan to land the mission in the water, and that'll be a really easy tack on. We have our swivel hull, and I'm pretty confident that we'll need to do we can't do this on our standard ascent. We're going to need to do a special trajectory to hit the right altitude at the right speed. And our Mark II radial mount parachute test is the same sort of thing. We need to make sure we're going slow enough, high enough up. And our heat shield test, which is going faster, really fast, high up. So I'm thinking, I think we'll make a special rocket. We'll plan our flight just to hit all of those zones in one go. If we can manage, that'd be really good. Then we can really be efficient. So one rocket cost, and we'll get all the income from all of those contracts. So let's see what other contracts we can pick up, because we've got 2 spaces, and we can lump them into the bunch. So we have a hull contract for the Flea. That's pretty high altitude and slow speed, but if we do a special in-atmo trajectory for the others, we might be able to include this. We have the launch pad test for the Terrier, which is super easy money. Planting a flag on the moon is our next big mission, but we're not going to do that quite yet, so we'll leave it. It has 3 days to expiration, so it's plenty of time for us to make quick rocket money-making scheme, and then we'll come back for that. So let's grab the Terrier test for sure, and we can do that straight away. The VIP is a suborbital space flight, so that means we need to get above 70 kilometers without achieving orbit. So that's not too hard to mix in, though we are looking at probably aiming shy of that for our other contracts. Okay, and the survey may be doable next time we're establishing orbit, depending on where the survey is. The keyword is always whether it's above or below the listed altitude. Below means we need a planar landing. Above means we just have to pass over it in orbit. And the lower the orbit, the easier that is. Alright, let's grab the flea hull. I think I know how we'll do this. Our last order of business, before we get to building, we have a good pile of money, and we know we want that tracking station upgrade for maneuver nodes, so let's just pick that up right now. Alright, here's my plan. We have 2 rockets to fire to get some contracts done. First, we're going to make a super simple launch pad tester to complete the Terrier test. So we'll glue it to the launch pad, we'll use negligible fuel, it'll cover the entire rocket so it'll cost almost nothing and knock out that contract super fast. So here we have space for a pilot, we have our engine, we'll use our shiny new stabilizer as the mount, and we'll just set that stabilizer release after the engine in the staging so it never leaves the pad. Because we're not leaving the pad, let's get Bill the engineer in there, because we don't need any pilot skills. So he can test the systems and get some XP. Bing bang boom, just like that. Contract done, do not pass go, do collect all of the monies. Wonderful, fantastic, sweeping success. Quickly check if we have any new contracts. It's always possible when you have a reputation gain. We did gain a new contract, but it's temperature surveys of the moon, so that's no good for our immediate purposes. Instead, let's just grab our VIP escort just in case. So, for a starter, our second test rocket, I know we kept missing our swivel hull because we were aiming for better orbit reaching mechanics. So for this test rocket, I'm thinking we'll aim for a shallow in-atmosphere angle so we can be sure to accelerate overall faster than we climb, and aim right for that right envelope where we need that speed and altitude combination. We also have the heat shield, which is a higher altitude and a higher speed. So instead of coming at that the way we were thinking, where we would be doing it on re-entry, instead I figure we just keep accelerating past that target with our swivel, and so that way we can do the heat shield on the way up. Now, the flea test is also high altitude, but it's actually a really slow speed. So what I'm thinking is, once we're up there, we'll actually flip the rocket around, we'll do a rocket brake, so we'll basically stall ourselves up in the upper atmosphere, and that way we'll be very slow for the flea haul, which will also feed nicely into our parachute test, because then we'll start coming down, and what we can do is we can just use our whatever's left of our rocket fuel to give us a break on the way down and make sure that we're going slow at high altitude, because we definitely can't rely on parachutes that high. Now, we're going to get lots of birds with one stone. So we may need to do some tampering and some practice on our flight plan to get it execute just so. But, just in case, I'm including the crew cabin so we can carry the VIP. And we'll bring along another of our staffers because we have an extra seat. We can get some more XP. I'm also including some barometers so I can collect some sweet new science. And I'm sure I'll only forget to take a few of the readings along the way. And I'm also, I tried tacking on a Juno for an easy win if we can splash down in water, but it can't be connected with our current equipment because, it's not meant to connect with decouplers or any of that. So basically, we'd need a radial attachment point, and that's not something that we have yet. That's something we'll unlock later on. So in order of the tests we're going to need the radial chutes on last, the flea on next to last, the heat shield before that, and the swivel long enough to reach that first target. I'm just going to guesstimate how much oomph it'll take for us to pull this maneuver off, expecting that we're going to use a lot of fuel to slow us down after we use a lot of fuel to speed us up. So I originally had the flea on as our last rocket, but I don't think that's going to give us much braking power. By the engineer's estimates of delta V. So I've included a swivel at the end so we can also brake well with our retro burn without hauling an empty flea. And finally, we're going to add stabilizers and tweak the staging to make sure everything is in order. And Trusty Jeb will be our test pilot. Now first we'll do a quick flight plan test just to see. And it looks like we do not have nearly enough get up and go to do what we're planning to do. So we're going to go back to the vehicle assembly building and we're going to tack on a whole bunch more pushing. Okay, take 2. We're definitely getting altitude and we're refining our flight path. But we missed our window and we're still short on fuel, so let's take it up another notch. Let's get full-on sequential asparagus going here. Okay, Third time is maybe a charm. We've got a rocket design now, but yeah, we done goofed our flight path, so let's try and get that right. Okay, take 4. We're on the case now. Just have to stay on target. So let's speed up the climb. All right, we're approaching our altitude range. Our speed is good. We'll just burn a bit to stay in range. And there's the speed. Getting the altitude and nailed it. Yes, 1 down. All right. Now we need to speed up a lot to hit our heat shield test range, but without gaining too much altitude. So, yep, so we definitely gained too much altitude, so we're going to try and hit it on the way back down. Man, trying to steer, manage speed, keep tabs on whether we're hitting conditions, and keep a finger on the button is hard work. There are too many things to keep attention on at once. Oof. Okay, while we wait for the rocket to come back down, you know what? Let's do our flip over to prepare for our retro burn. There we go. So this way, we'll burn into the retrograde so that we can slow ourselves down. Remember that retrograde mark on the nav ball is where is the opposite direction of where we're headed. So burning into that will try to negate our speed in either component. You can always burn horizontally or vertically to try and cancel one or the other out. And here I'm just going to do a little bit of braking just to make sure we don't accelerate too much with gravity. And we're getting close, but the condition's not turning green. It's the speed. We're at the right speed, but it doesn't say that. So let's check. No, okay, this says everything is green. Run the test, run the test. Yes! Haha! 2 down. Now it's time to start hitting the brakes. Because we had to wait to come back down for the heat shield test, we couldn't do the flea haul right. So we'll have to save that for another day. And we're not just going to cancel out our speed entirely, just get ourselves very much slowed down. So then we can actually use some careful burns to keep us from accelerating too much before we hit our parachute zone. Now, going slowly, it's actually safe to deploy our parachutes, even though they won't deploy fully. They'll actually help us keep our speed down. And once they are deployed, we definitely won't speed up enough to break them while we're in the atmosphere. The rocket was just our tool for while we were above the atmosphere. Now we just need to get down into range, nice and slow and patient. Hat trick, nailed it. Yes, happy dance, victory dance. We so awesome. Oh yes, go us. Oh yeah. Okay, we didn't pass 70 kilometers, so we didn't complete the VIP contract. That's fine. We missed the shot at the flea, but we completed 3 contracts for a nice tidy stack of money, love, and appreciation. So we'll collect a little bit of science on the way down, and when we splash down, that'll be the cherry on our sundae. Ooh, and in fact, our bite-sized morsels of science have given us enough to buy another 45 science block. You know, we also got some money back. Yep, here we go. We got some money back and some, yeah, we didn't recover much of the rocket, but it's something. It's something. Can't underestimate that. And we got some XP for our pilots and some reputation. We love reputation. But you know what? This the 45 science block gives me an idea. Let's make a super simple, tiny plane and fly it into the ocean. You know, for science. And, you know, to make money, because they want us to do a Juno splashdown test. So we can just do a tiny little rocket. I'm liking this idea. Let's see, what do we need to build a tiny plane? Contracts first. Maybe we'll have something to pile on our little plane. We have a VIP escort, but those are the ones that fly past the moon, so we'll leave that off for the moment. We have tests for the Spark and the Ant, but those are both tiny form engines that we'll use later on probes. I don't think now's the time for that. So you know what, let's, there's nothing to stack, so let's just pick up the Moon Escort and the Moon Flag missions. Make sure we don't miss out on our plane adventures. Yeah, that seems like a good plan. Next, we'll pick up aviation, and this will give us our first set of simple bits and bobs to make a plane. Basically, you need liquid fuel, an air intake instead of oxidizer. I mean, you can use rocket engines, but we'll use air. Surfaces that generate lift, and surfaces that generate control. And for our test, we'll want to have an extra Juno that we can activate through staging. We're not going to make a terribly well-designed plane. All we need is for it to make it to the water in one piece. So we'll try to phone it in as best we can. But while we're here, I'll give you a super general concept about plane design. Obviously, we'll want a cockpit unless we ever want to make a drone plane. We'll want a body with liquid fuel and a jet engine. Relatively speaking, it's more efficient for a plane to use a jet engine because we don't have to carry the weight of oxidizer. So that means using up our fuel has a much slower, subtler effect on the weight we're carrying, as well as on the balance of our plane. The jet engine is also very efficient at burning its fuel in the way that we'll use it. So instead, we'll just have intakes instead of rocket engines. And here you can see we have our tiny fuel pods with tiny engines. We have tiny wings and tiny elevons. The elevons are those little flappy dealies that we put on the wings that give us a little bit of aerodynamic control. And we polish it off with tiny fixed landing gear. And we're using the indicators to make sure we have a functional balance. The yellow and black globe is the center of mass, while the blue and black is the center of lift. The purple and black, when you see it, is the center of thrust. And in any design, you need to balance these three centers. Though we de-emphasize them a lot with our typical rocket designs. There, we're really just concerned about the mass and the thrust. With the plane, we're particularly concerned about all three. Planes are a lot more touchy. They're a lot more of a delicate balance. The rocket is relatively pretty brute force when it comes to aerodynamics. For planes, we want our center of lift to be slightly behind and absolutely in line with our center of mass. And our center of thrust, we also want to be in that same line, though it's not as big a deal how far behind or ahead it is. There are little nuances always to these sorts of things, and we'll get into that more later, probably. And this combination means that we push our craft through its center, which means we don't produce rotational forces. And the lift is essentially catching our plane as it continually tries to fall. But don't worry, planes want to be in the air, I swear. Okay, let's try our very first plane flight. Now, we're going to be a little conservative on the throttle. We'll start it off full just to get us rolling and see how well that does. We definitely need to get enough speed to get our tiny little wings lifting us. Oh, and that is not a problem with our two jet engines. We are racing. And there we go, we have liftoff. We don't want to go too crazy, going too high or too fast. So we're going to throttle back a little bit. Oh, bouncing bad. Okay, we just need to get into the water in one piece, and this is too fast to land safely, so we need to ease way back. Maybe we can glide it in gently. Nope, we're losing that critical speed. And coming down, we're going way too yeah. Let's try this again. We don't need to go crazy, we don't need to fly. We have to get a certain speed to be able to fly, but that speed is too fast to land. So instead, let's see if we can just roll it into the ocean. We'll just drive off our lumpy runway. We'll just drive along the frictionless, super smooth ground, and then too fast, lost of control. Okay. Okay, we can do this. We're just driving into the water. It should be super easy, right? So, going down the slope is tough. Going too fast is tough, because obviously our little plane is not a supremely well-handling land vehicle, because we just slapped it together. So let's see if we can just bring it down the runway a little bit. Keep the speed low. We'll just try to keep it all on the even. Nope. Wobble, compensating, fishtailing. Nope. Bad, awful, terrible. We're broken. Okay. New plan. Redesign. We are going to fly, and we are going to catch ourselves with a parachute. This is the new plan. Also, in our grand plan of being clever, we're not going to try to drive down the lumpy runway. Instead, we are going to very slowly and very gently let ourselves off the side little ramp on the runway, out onto the nice, frictionless, very ultra smooth grass surface that surrounds the spaceport, because it's all about rocket science and they haven't really done a lot with ground physics. We're going to very carefully take off, launch ourselves towards the water. We're not going to go crazy, try and fly too high. We might flip, we might crash. All we need to do is be airborne. There we go. And then we will hit our parachute. Our parachute will let us down nice and gently into the water. Ever so gently. There we go. Staging test. We can collect a little bit of science. There we go. There we go. Okay, good. Contract done. Collect a little bit of science. Just because we can. And there we go. Now our happy Kerbal can be recovered. And we win more money because we've done good things. You know what? I don't like leaving stragglers. So we're going to do a super quick, cheap rocket. Launch it up so it peaks at the right height and get that flea haul done. And just to make the most of doing a single contract in one launch, we're not going to do any staging or decoupling. We're just going to launch it up and load it up with enough parachutes that it can splash down safely. Parachutes are so much cheaper than the cost of all those parts that we detach. So we'll just plan to, land something super heavy. And no, this rocket is not shaped like anything, no more so than any other rocket. Don't be ridiculous. This is science, people. This is serious. You know what? For a good day of hard work and completing contracts, let's take this as a victory lap. Just sit back, enjoy the ride as our little rocket launches to glory and drifts back down into the ocean like a giant metal downy feather. thank you for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Like it if you like it, subscribe if you want to hear about more and support me, and share it with your friends. See you next time.